Thank you to Gregory King for today's contingency. Agamemnon contingency. Kessler. The person we are now is not the person we were years ago. This is because the choices we make along the way will shape us into the person we will become. If your life is filled with the choice to do what's right, to put others above yourself, then it's very likely that you grew into a selfless person, maybe even a hero to those around you. But if your choices were selfish, thinking only of yourself and walking over others, then it'd be easy to assume you'd grow up to be a villain. If I had to name someone who'd best personify the effects that choices have on one's development, Cole McGrath would be the first name to come to mind. Originally a delivery man, Cole would find himself in the middle of a devastating event. And I mean that literally, as an explosion which cost the lives of thousands started from a package that he had been paid to deliver. Not only did he survive the explosion, but the source of the explosion, the ray sphere, awakened latent abilities within him, resulting in Cole gaining the power of electrokinesis. From this point forward, Cole seemed to have two paths of which his life could take, the one where he chooses to be a hero, and one where he went down a darker path. This is the path we will be focusing on for this contingency. As stated, he has the power of electrokinesis. Not only can he absorb electricity, he can then use that power he absorbed for a variety of attacks. His standard means of attacking being a blast of electricity he can shoot from his hand. Despite being his weakest attack, it has shown more than capable of inflicting a large amount of damage. This attack also seems to have little to no drain on his reserves. Above that, Cole is capable of manipulating his electricity in creative ways. For example, being able to put up a force field that can block against gunfire, or an electrical pulse that can push against objects with great force. By focusing more energy into his output, Cole is also capable of unleashing more devastating attacks. Precision energy bolts, electro grenades, even a condensed ball of electricity that can explode on impact. And if he were to ever find himself overwhelmed by an opponent, Cole is capable of calling down lightning from the sky itself. And if you think being struck by lightning once is devastating, imagine being struck more than a dozen times in succession. With powers like this, Cole was capable of defeating Kessler, the man who not only tricked him into activating the ray sphere in the first place, but also someone who would reveal himself to be a future version of Cole. All in the effort of making his younger self strong enough to battle against an oncoming threat. Although whether or not Cole cares for this depends on his karma level. That said, his infamous path is not considered the true path of his story. Defeating his future self is also not where his story ends, as he would eventually have the threat he was warned of come for him. A massive creature known as the Beast. Cole's powers would remain relatively unchanged at this point, but there were some notable additions that need mention. The most obvious being when he'd add the power of Nyx, another conduit like himself, to his own arsenal. These Napalm abilities would alter some of his existing moves, increasing the brutality for anyone unfortunate enough to be on the receiving end of them. For example, the normal electrical pulse he can use will gain a cloud of ash and dust, having the same effect as a smoke bomb on anyone caught in its path. Though of the abilities he obtained, the ionic drain is the one I am most concerned about. You see, I mentioned that Cole can absorb electricity, though this ability is not limited to just objects that carry an electrical charge. As if needed, Cole was capable of leaching the bioelectricity from the human body, a move which would result in the death of the victim. In his early years of using his powers, he could only do this to one person at a time. But with the ionic drain ability, he is capable of draining multiple people within a radius of himself. In short, even if you're not his target, your life would be at risk if you were too close to him when he needs a boost of energy. Worse of all, should he continue in this path, Cole would be granted the power of the Beast, allowing him to activate the power of other conduits, though this would come at the cost of any non-conduit caught in the blast, potentially killing millions of humans. In short, I have plenty of reasons to justify this contingency. The power to wield electricity is not one you'd want to take lightly. Anyone familiar with static would have an idea already. Though if asked, I believe static would have the advantage on that confrontation. One of the most exploitable weaknesses I can make use of is that despite Cole being capable of wielding the electricity within his body, that doesn't mean he has total mastery over it, as it's been stated that Cole's body has adverse effects on objects around him. For example, when holding a handgun, he'd accidentally cause the gunpowder in the bullets to go off, destroying it. He also has adverse reactions to water, while small amounts will cause no actual damage to him. Should Cole's body be submerged, it can result in the electricity in his body to forcibly expunge from him. Should he be submerged for too long, it could result in his death. That said, I'd rather not risk dumping water on a living generator. But using an underwater cell would be effective in keeping him secure after capture. Depowering Cole is my #1 priority if I want any hope in effectively capturing him, something made difficult by the multitude of means he has at his disposal to recharge himself. But I do have a few theories on how I can accomplish this. The first and most direct method is the use of a collar that suppresses metahuman abilities, the same kind used to keep the many superpowered villains of my own world in prison. That said, the collars could prove incompatible with conduits, or specifically could be drained of any power within them by Cole before they can be activated. I'm also currently developing a form of an electrostatic dissipative foam, one which, when spread across the body, not only hardens quickly, but also would prevent any form of electricity from getting in or out. The idea being to insulate him long enough to be moved to a secure location. I am also not above employing the aid of others, especially with the threat level Cole has, which is why I've made contact with someone I believe would best counter Cole's powers. The Atlantean by the name Kaldur has several powers to his skill set, but the most notable are the ability to manipulate both water and electricity. Not only is his mastery of these elements of a higher caliber, Kaldur is also a more skilled combatant. With his aid, my chance of subduing Cole becomes a far more likely possibility. That said, this depends on whether or not Cole has the powers of the beast at this current time. Should he have it, though, I may need to upgrade this contingency into a Justice League matter. If you also have a character you wish for me to cover, or just want to support this channel, I'll have a link to my Ko-fi page. There will also be a Google Doc with the list of characters who have ever been done or already commissioned by others.